I know a lot of you, there's a number of clients here. Many people I've seen over the years too. Good to see you all again. Moe Russell is with me. Russell Consulting. A lot of you, some of you work with Moe, a lot of you know Moe. He's kind of like one of the experts in patients. So it's really good to be here with Moe. So what we're going to do today is, Ken Mogler couldn't have done a better job of setting the stage for what we're going to be doing right after lunch today and right after lunch tomorrow, which is talking about cost reduction numbers and trying to get some kind of benchmarking. And Ken and I talked a little bit, and I said that, because really what we're looking at are competitive KPIs. So Ken talks about KPIs, and we really are looking at what it helps you understand. Now we're looking more at a little more strategic level than at a day-to-day activity level, or even weekly, or how monthly performance as you go. Because unfortunately, it takes time, since we don't directly charge for putting the stuff together. It takes time. It has to go in outside of our busy season. This data tends to be a little delayed, like way delayed. But it still, I think, has a lot of validity because it lets you know if you participate. And part of my job today is to encourage you to participate. What it starts to let you know what the competitive numbers looks like. So I want to do a few introductions. Jim Reed in the red shirt in the back of the room, and Bob Krogmeyer down here in the blue shirt. Both are staffers at LattaHarris. If you have been around our firm for a number of years, this is kind of our pork and crop management, ag management team. And you notice it's getting larger. The stuff we've been doing has been resonating, and we've been picking up new clients around the country, and we're doing more and more. And to respond to that, we're stacking up, and we're bringing some young guys in. So there's somebody there after the old guys go away. And we're bringing highly knowledgeable guys coming on. This guy's working on the second master's, so Bob up here, so we really appreciate that. JR back there in the back just has a wealth of experience and knowledge and really knows how to work with people to get the job done. So, little Mo, you can do your own advertising in your practice. Okay, so what does this require? I think a lot of times people think, they get really concerned that I can't do this, but I would bet most everybody in this room, especially FBS users, and anybody that does enterprise kind of accounting, keep track of your corn cost and your soybean cost. I'm talking cost now, direct input cost. Yeah, there's lots of overheads that get blended together, but we can deal with that. So what does it take? Well, I call it near accrual. You've got to have some idea of what your payables and receivables are. You have to have a cutoff date. We have to know, are we dealing with 17 corn or 17 soybeans, you know? So we have to have your costs basically by crop by year to participate in the crop survey. And if you have other crops, wheat, or you have, interplanted soybeans in the wheat, we can deal with all that. But we just need to have it enterprised. We need another one that's really probably the most problematic. If you're trying to give you any kind of a full balance sheet, even if it's just with your banker, you've got some idea of what your prepays are. Your tax guys are always having you do stuff that you may not do normally, and so we just have to adjust for that. But I would guess the vast majority in this room can participate in this survey. And there has to be some way to do some kind of cost allocation, or you accept the way we do cost allocation, which I will talk about. And if you don't like the way we do it, then you need to help me when we do it. This is a confidential peer group. Norm, what did you call this? What's this? You call it some kind of, what was your title for it?
How low can you grow?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, but it's an individual thing. It's not a competition at all. Okay, nobody knows who anybody else is that participates in this. And the only competition you have is with yourself, the organization. But what it does is it helps you understand how do we stack up on a competitive basis. It's managerial accounting. And I had an office full of accountants, CPAs, and master's degrees, people carrying master's degrees. And there are a bunch of people that really, you know might say anal on some things about numbers, which is good. That's what they need to do. But managerial accounting is information for managers to make decisions. And I really fit in well, they tell me, because I've got most of the close is good, so if I'm 95% of the way there, I feel like I got something I can do something with. I don't have to get hung up and trying to get 100%. So, again, that's part of fitting into this thing is, yeah, it's not absolutely perfect. But I tell you, if you start hanging out with a bunch of accountants and you work on financial statements and you work on tax reports, there's a phrase they use in accounting called materiality. Whether that change is big enough to actually worry about. And there's a lot of stuff that can slip in. It's not material, let's not worry about it. So that's pretty small usually, but you don't have to be perfect to make this happen. That's the 90% of the way there. But the key thing that really drives this is, there were some discussions about credibility of the data, is that if it's done right, and this is often where we come in and help people get it figured out, if it's done right and you use FBS and you do enterprise accounting and you do some kind of consolidation product, the net total of all of your nets of all your various enterprises better equal your net for your entire operation, or you don't have something under control. So you do tie out, at the end of the day, you want that variance between the tie-out number and the actual income better be understandable and better be relatively small. But it doesn't have to be zero, but you better understand it if it's not. You were saying about that $85,000 variance on the overheads. You understand it, you're okay with it. Now, I hope you'd be closer to that on this, but we would do some assignments.
We tie out to net income. It's just that we've already recognized that much in our income statement.
What are you doing?
And push the button that you're not supposed to push.
Now, why did you tell me about
That's the button you do not.
I'm going to push this.
Yeah.
So, if we have some anal people in this room, which I guess we might have a few, during the nature of what some of you do for your organizations, just these are kind of some disclaimers. Not all the numbers. If you total up a row and it's going over to a subtotal, it may not total perfectly because we drop in. We do a lot of normalization processes, and sometimes, and I have to get everything on one screen, so I don't always show every single number. And that could be things like co-op dividends. That's basically a credit on your input costs. It could be things like you do custom work, and so you get some credits on your cost based on custom work. So don't get too hung up over that. That you can see that. I think that's written in your handout. And again, I apologize for the small numbers. But again, that bottom line is we try to make sure everything makes sense and ties out. But as you're looking at it, the individual printed report, don't get excessively hung up over. Or the addition doesn't come out perfectly by the penny or a few cents. It's not material, trust me. These are the headings. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we group things and then how we do some assignments of costs. And that's, if you want a different assignment, then we have to know it as we go in, but that's totally okay. So we always combine seed fertilizer and chemical, and some of the things that aren't shown there is like co-op dividends and so forth, and we reduce that cost. We try to come up with a total input cost because we feel that that's a comparable number between farms. If you're planting GMO corn and you're able to use Roundup, or you're planting non-GMO, you have to use a more expensive herbicide, that should adjust in that total input cost. So that's why we do that. On land, we actually do rental cost of land, we do interest on owned land, we do property taxes, We do a credit back for government program payments because it's a real number. It's got to fit in some place, so that's where it comes in. We figure that government program payment gets built into the cost of land in many cases. So that's the land cost. You'll see some pretty low land costs in here when you get to the results of the LattaHarris stuff, and that's due to, land's all paid for. They got property taxes, they got some soil conservation. They don't have a lot of costs. So you'll see. Operations, probably the biggest cost structure, and Moe's going to come back and talk to you more about this later. The biggest area of cost in a cropping operation that I think is that you have the most control over. I mean, somewhat on the input cost, you pick things, but those are pretty universal. But your operations cost, which is your machinery leases, your machinery rents, your machinery interest, your machinery depreciation, your machinery repairs, your labor, family labor, farm labor. Those are all things that go into that operations cost per acre. And that is the one that consistently we see the most variation between counties. That's also one that this is a key aspect of doing this data and why we like to deal with people who know. Because if we understand the operation, and you got something funky going on because you're trying to move money out of one corp into the other corp, and so you got these oddball costs, that really isn't an operations cost. It's something you're doing for financial reasons or family reasons. If we know about it, we'll ask you about it. So if we don't know about it, tell us about it so that we can make some adjustments for things. So we're trying to get more to a realistic reality than something that, you put in twice the rent because one of the owners has a condo in Florida. He's trying to pay it off in 2 years or whatever. Stuff like that. You got to know about it. And then we kind of pull together the drying cost, the G&A, the crop insurance. Crop insurance is a tricky one. I still actually would, on any of this, I welcome any kind of feedback. Is crop insurance is it really a cost, a revenue adjuster because it's a risk management tool, or is it a cost of business? I pull it off separately, and I put it after the sorting number so that, lots of people have different strategies on crop insurance. Okay, I have no hope you can read this on the screen. Page 4 of your hand. So this is the LattaHarris. Actually, it's so damn small I cannot read it. So we got 30,000, 6.508 million bushels. Thank you. Great. 6.508 million bushels in this report, 30,000 acres of corn. Commercial corn. And so you can look across that, and you can see the sorted column, which is the total before drying G&A crop insurance. And it enabled broke corn for about 64 bushel. All right, yeah, they've got 230 bushel yield, which is pretty good yield. This is 15 data now. But they actually, how competitive is that? That's really competitive. Well, how do they get there? They get there because they got a $57 land cost. One of those examples of people that have land all paid for. But look at that input cost. $256. Now I know this operation, and I know that they also have a hog barn on that farm, and they get the so their fertilizer cost is pretty low to get a 230 bushel yield. So those of you contemplating putting hog barns on your farms, it's an interesting observation. And you look at an amazing $57 operations cost. How did you get that? It's a great secret. You hire somebody else to do it. They don't know what it costs. So you get it done a hell of a lot cheaper than you do it yourself. So you see the low ones there? That's exactly what's happening. Now, these are small acreages. These are not 3,000 acre farms. These are very small farms. But there are people that are willing to do a lot of stuff for less than it actually costs you to do it. And keep that in mind when you're thinking about doing projects. And if you know your costs and nobody else knows its costs, it gives you a great advantage. So that's what you're looking at. So we're looking at $1.64, $2.88, $2.97. A lot of them, in the average, was $3.27. So a lot of them below that average, of course, some above that average. Look at what the universities thought it was going to cost. Down at the bottom, they're the highest cost producers. Now, this data all came out at the early part of the new year. So things, it's not kept up very well. But of course, I think the average yields were better than the universities, both Iowa State and the University of Illinois. They thought the average input costs, they're pretty close to that. Iowa State's at 322. The average of the participants is 324. Illinois thought a little higher for some reason. And one thing that kind of surprised me was the average of this group, which has owned and rented and crop shared ground, was 190. That's 30,000 acres at an average cost of 190. I was a little surprised at that cost, but some of these operations, I think, are some of the best operations in the country that are participating in here. And we're pretty aggressive about trying to lower some of the lease costs and so forth, at least make a sizable attempt at it. Some of those towards the bottom of the list weren't able to do as much on land costs. Input costs, look at that range, though. Take out the bottom one, we look at what, 290 Moe to, what's the highest one, 371? 290 to almost $100 range of input costs. And we think it's all figured out. And everybody uses the same seed, fertilizer, and chemical relative costs to get the bushel. You're going to see, Kent set us up here. We talked about a concept called waste. Now, if you get 200 bushel yield, it costs you $190 or $200. If you get 200 bushel yield, it costs you $300. That difference, what is that? Well, Kent described it as waste. What are you getting? You spend a lot more money and not getting a whole lot more. So, one of the things that, Kent, thank you so much for helping draw this to my attention. I didn't recognize that what we were talking here, we're starting to measure waste. When you compare your performance against a competitive number, and you long or short, if we decide to define waste, or it defines opportunities that you got to define. We had to switch projectors here. So here's the soybean costs. And I'm rolling through this fairly quick, so I'm very willing to take questions. Moe, if you want to take questions too. Norm's keeping us to a hard schedule here, so not too bad this thing. So look at the soybean costs. This is a different goal on the top. 556. The highest cost one is 1166. What a huge range in soybeans. And some of that's explained by land cost. One of the things you can do with this data set too, if you think land is the big culprit, go through and subtract the land cost and add in 220 an acre or whatever you want, and do the math. And yes, land has some effect, but that's only part of it. That waste, that slippage happens in more places. And the big culprit oftentimes is that operations cost. 271 on the high end. I'm going to throw out the 38 because I think there's something funky there. I know what's happening in the 38. They have a lot of customers. They are buying down the cost of machining by using that machine for more hours and more days and more utilization. And the way the calculation is done, and you guys can correct me if you don't think I do this right, if you own a combine, you own a sprayer, and you put it over 2,000 of your acres and you use 2,000 of your neighbor's acres and they pay you some money to do that, I take that money directly off your cost of owning that equipment. Now, yeah, from a different perspective, you might say that it can cost something, but from your ability to be competitive, that cost comes up. And again, argue with me or challenge me on that, but that's how I do that, because that's being generated by that labor, by that fuel, by that machinery you own, you're out there running. And if you want to know how to survive over the next couple of years, and you've got too much green machine, red machine, I don't care what it is, but if you've got too much machinery out there, and you got the labor, and you got the wherewithal to run that over more acres, and everybody thought for a while they had to run it over their own acres, you really don't. You just got to run it over acres. You got to get paid for it. Another thing we find out by looking at this data is the university cost per acre calculation. What they tell you in cost to run combine over an acre or planter or anything is grossly understated. I don't care what university, it's grossly understated. It costs you way more. So when you are working for a neighbor and he wants to pay you the out-of-state rates, and that's the only thing you can find to do, and you say, well, okay, I'm going to lose money doing it, and you will, but you'll probably make more total money by taking that money than you would. Now, this is based on the assumption that you have unused capacity. If you have to go hire employees or you have to go buy a bigger combine, the equation changes and you'd have to do a lot more count to make it work. But if you got the stuff, you got the labor, and you're just getting more hours off of it, and you're bouncing over rough fields for another 10 days of summer, but it can make a lot of difference on dropping that machinery cost. We had a conversation, who I was having it with, earlier today about people by all of us, Moe is your Jensen. About spending too much money on a combine and justifying because I really like it. It's a really expensive like at the moment to have way more capacity than it can generate. So enjoy it, running over somebody else's field, and getting paid for it. So that brings up the thought I had about that. So some of the clients I work with that have some very competitive numbers in here, they're buying a really big new fancy combine every year or two, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't imagine how much they cost now. But they don't buy, they may have 5,000 acres of crop. They don't buy two combines. They run one combine 22 hours a day. They have second shifts. And they figure out basically the whole thing you were talking about, Ken, on flow. They have figured out how to get that corn away from that machine through the whatever drying system it is so they can keep at that pace. And so they're able to buy down that cost of that machine because they only need one instead of two. And those are the strategies, lean strategies. What they be lean strategies, Ken? Those are those lean strategies that start to separate, and you can see that you just start doing your own calculations of the differences between, even the average and the less than average. There's a lot of money laying around, and that's where the lean strategies start to come about. So, any questions on the 2015 data on your sheet?
The university numbers, Farm Business Association, actual, or they
Go to their website and you look up what they project the cost to be.
That's projected. It's theoretical.
And actually, the 15 is what they projected as actual averages. It's what they listed as actual averages for the state.
From the cooperators, maybe?
I don't know how they get the data. Do you guys know, I know this on a near fact, I guess, a little bit of a wag, but Iowa State's, I'm pretty sure of this one, Iowa State's machinery cost per acre in the cost survey that lots of people price to use the machinery when they rent their services to their neighbor, is based on reported numbers from landlords. Why is it low? people that are hired get done are the people that are reporting the numbers. I used to think it was a calculated number that the ag economists went in and they, did all the magic of the numbers and came up with, this is what it should be. No, that's just what people report. So a lot of you who hire custom services or you sell custom services, start reporting higher numbers. I don't know how you gain that system.
So it's always the sellers who report, not the buyers?
Well, that's my I really don't know. If you know, I think Illinois is very similar. It's not scientific. Okay. So, with that, Mo?
All right. First of all, I'd like to introduce Brian Jansen. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Brian Jansen. I'm one of Moe's associates in Byron, Illinois. I handed out at the table a sheet that if you want, we'll send you our free market update. There's not much going on in the market. Kind of a boring read. This isn't I won't turn into a J now or anything like that. Sorry, the bad joke. Go ahead, sign up, and I will collect those and get those out to you.
Yeah. In addition to financial advice, I'm going to talk about next, we provide combined marketing advice, and we're half sold on this year's corn crop at about $4.05 net, and we're 80% sold on soybeans at $10. So you can read the recommendations for the next 2 weeks. Brian will send them to you if you're interested in learning more about that, please.
And Hobbs gave me this information, but it's a little old, so you probably have increased your sales since.
Yeah, right.
And these were the numbers that you're receiving before. Used to value the value of the input.
Yeah. For these numbers, on page 6, I'll back up. The numbers John just reviewed with you are LattaHarris clients' actual numbers 2015. Page 6 and 7 are our clients' projected 2016 numbers. What we do with each of our clients is we sit down and we project all costs, all debt payments, operator draw, depreciation, and profit. We feel strongly that profit should be viewed as a cost. Profit is a cost to staying in business and capitalizing your growth. So here's what the numbers reflect. You look at the variation from $224 projected profit to negative $410.
So page 6 shows the ones that are in black, and page 7 are the ones that are in red.
And
they're all the same data set. They're all those clients.
For each client, we use 386 corn and 940 soybeans. So that's our actual results are higher than that, but this at least puts a benchmark for everyone.
But to me, a staggering range of potential profitability.
Yeah.
And these are what, correct me if I'm wrong, these are back January, February, March, whenever you guys
Right.
are doing. This is what their clients is anticipating. If you're anticipating those kind of losses, well, they really give you a challenge, don't they?
Yeah.
They're making enough profit to cover them.
The other thing I'd like to cover, which I think is even more important, Norm, could you bring up those 2 slides that I emailed to you? This weekend, we finally, I'll back up. As John very correctly pointed out, 2 of the biggest variable costs we've identified that affect bottom line profitability are machinery cost breaker and labor cost breaker. And this weekend, we finally got the data together. This is 2015 actual data. And it's trended for 5 years.
And 12 to 16.
Right, 12 to 16. So
What is 16? Is that projected or is that?
no, that's 2015 actual.
Okay, so actually these are lagging.
Right. And then we combine machinery and labor cost per acre, because there's 2 ways you can do it. More equipment, less labor. More labor, less equipment. But at the end of the day, it's a combination of the 2 that hits your bottom line.
And your number does not have fuel.
No.
My number does, this number does not.
Machinery cost breaker, here's how we figure it. We take the market value of your equipment used in crop production. So if you have a livestock operation, we take out the hay bine and the chopper and the manure spreader. We just look at the equipment used in crop production. If you have commercially licensed semis, we do not include them. If you have farm plates on your semis, we do include them. So we include the equipment that it takes to get the grain from the field to the co-op to store it, or your grain bin, or your dryer to dry it. Then we take 25% of that market value in figuring your machinery cost breaker. 10% for depreciation, 10% for interest or opportunity cost, and 5% for repair. So if you have a $500,000 line of equipment, we maintain it costs you $125,000 a year to own. Those three costs: depreciation, interest or opportunity costs, and repairs. We do not include fuel. John does.
But that is a very powerful benchmark based on years of experience.
Yes.
Because the biggest black hole in most farms is having any kind of clue what the machinery cost, depreciation numbers.
We've compared this to actual Farm Business Association data, and it's within 1 or 2 or 3% of that 25%. And we do this for benchmarking purposes. Then labor cost breaker. Nobody figures labor cost breaker like we do. So here's the formula. And I get a lot of criticism because of it from university people. We take the actual operator draw out of the farming operation, add hired labor, and divide it by harvested acres. And I can recall one client saying, "Yeah, but Mo, I got $3 in college." I said, "Is it hitting your checkbook?" "Yeah, big time." I said, "It's affecting your cost of production and your competitive advantage." Conversely, I can think of a client whose spouse is a pharmacist at Walmart. They take no operator draw out of the farm. So what's very interesting and real encouraging is in the past year, both machinery and labor cost breaker have dropped. And that's commendable. The average of 114 in machinery cost breaker, you know what the range is? 16 to 237. Labor cost breaker, the average is $46.70. The range is 7 to 162. And I maintain that what you pay for seed, fertilizer, and chemicals is about what your neighbor pays. But these two costs vary tremendously. You can see the trend. We encouraged our clients in 2013 and 14 to upgrade their equipment because those were profitable years. They did. The past year, very little equipment purchased, and you can see it in the reduction in cost. Return on assets, the trend significantly down. Return on equity, 0.9%. You say, boy, that's not very profitable. You know what the average of the Fortune 500 companies' return on equity was last year? Negative 2.9. So our client base is still better than the Fortune 500 average.
And I've been asked to see, and I probably at some point can do some benchmarking on DuPont, on ROE, but the numbers I've seen based on 15 data are really not very inconsistent with what most out there. We probably saw a range of 5 or 6% to minus that same amount. If you were close to break even in 15 property operations, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I'm encouraged about next year. That machinery and labor cost breaker dropped 8%. Fertilizer is down significantly. Fuel is down significantly. Dana, what did you just book your propane for? 56 cents? Yeah. A semi-load. And other farm fuel is down significantly. Cage rents are coming down slowly, but they're coming down. So I'm encouraged long-term wise. Our 5-year average is 13.2% return on equity. The Fortune 500 5-year average is 12%. So I've maintained for years that there's more money in farming than any other industry, and the average has proved that out. Could you advance one more slide, John?
Sure.
The second set of data we just started tracking 4 years ago is working capital to annual expenses. Most bankers look at a current ratio. Current liabilities, current assets divided by current liabilities. We look at it differently. We look at the dollar amount of working capital divided by your total cash outlay. Not depreciation, that's a non-cash cost. We look at total cash outlay. It is still a good figure at 38%. The dollar amount of working capital per acre is $317 per acre. Now, 1.4 years ago, we green, yellow, and red light these categories. Green light working capital is over 50% working capital to annual expenses. So it's dropped. We knew it would, but it's still mid-range yellow because you've got to go below 20% to get red light working capital. Dollar amount of working capital per acre is 317. Farm credit, their green light's 200. I've been telling them that's too low. It needs to be probably 300 at a minimum. So, and owner's equity, average 66%, anything above 60 is green line. So, we're pretty proud of these numbers of our client base. It includes 256,000 acres. The average size is about 2,500 acres. And so I'm encouraged about I've always been excited about the future of production agriculture. But it's a cyclical business. And the report Brian will send you, the first chart, and the first thing we talk about is the CRB. The CRB is called Commodity Research Bureau Index. And it is essentially the Dow Jones average of everything pumped, mined, or produced off the land. So it includes all the grains, all the livestock, all the precious metals, all of the petroleum products. And that index dropped and closed the year lower for the last 5 consecutive years. That has never happened in history. So those of you in the commodity production business, if you feel like you've been kind of beat up in the last 5 years, boy, have you ever.
So what's that say for land values?
Yeah. It's caused downward pressure on land values for sure. However, in the last 5 months, that index has turned around and started up. And so I'm encouraged that these numbers will not go negative. I think 2017, I think we're in a 3-year trough, and I think 2016 is the 3rd year. And so I'm excited about your future, the business you're in.
That's the best news I've heard.
Any questions? Okay, thanks, John.
We will be back to it.
Get back to
So in the Russell data set, Moe a couple 100,000 they consult on. Not every piece of data that they touch or have farm that they have access to, do they have data that fits into this data set. So it's about 90,000 acres, 50-some operations in the Russell data set that's there. And the very distinct difference is the LattaHarris stuff was cost per bushel for corn, cost per bushel soybeans harvested, corn harvested. This is, Moe said it's the 2016 data, and it's on a per acre basis. It's a cost per acre. Because when people go to them and they do this work, they're trying to make sure they've got enough revenue per acre locked in to cover their costs. So they take a slightly different view of looking at the information. So just be aware of that. So that's their headings, which they're very much the same thing. If you go back to their reports, you'll see some text in blue and red. That just kind of sorts the top, the top, or in this case, better 10% versus the bottom 10%. And they said this is our cost, this is what we anticipate for yield, times those dollar amounts per bushel for corn and beans. We calculated, because they do give us the information, it was about 65% corn and about 35% beans planned for 16 in the state of Sweden. So this screen, which is, I think, page 8 of the regular. And I talked this morning a little bit about what we're trying to add. We really applaud Moe for looking at the 16-day, but what I would really like to see is people looking at their cost production projected at least 12 to 24 months out. So what I have here is those data sets that those clients of ours that we're working with. And so this is showing what they projected for 16 for corn and soybeans. And the really interesting number, and I think the point I'm trying to get to, is the bottom of the page, where I basically take the Russell average of 646. But if you take the LattaHarris average, which is a completely different set of operations, in a process that's different, not the same as the way Russell does it, and we look at what they projected on average, when I take it to a per acre basis on that 65-35% corn and beans, it comes out to be 646. Exactly the same averages. I was shocked at that. But what I took from that was you don't farm the averages. You farm individual acreages. You each have your own unique cost of production. You each have your own unique KPI. So a lot of the industry, in my experience, Moe, correct me if I'm wrong, tend to look at those averages to make decisions off of. And look at the range of averages that are in the previous page, or even in the LattaHarris data, the range of average performances by individual operations. So if you're farming only the average, I'm not sure it tells you. If you're only looking at average numbers, I'm not sure what exactly it tells you. Now the next slide. So this is the Russell data. So I did these scatter charts, and I was just trying. I've been struggling over the 2 years we've been doing this. If you're here for tomorrow for the pork benchmarking, we have come up with processes to define what we call a 50th and a 90th percentile benchmark. 90th meaning you're pretty much in the top 10% of the industry with these kind of numbers, I believe. 50th percentile is you're pretty much an average producer. And if you're going to stay an average producer, if you're below average, you're probably not going to be in this industry a long time. It's amazing how long you can be in if you spiral down. But it's not a competitive number. So we try to identify things. And I've been trying to think about what is that range in crop production. And what I've kind of found is crop production is not nearly as straightforward as crop production. It's been eluding me. So I just started to play around with data and threw this in a scatter chart. And so over here on this side, we've got, because I don't know that you've got this printed out. You've got the gross dollars per acre projected. This is what Russell's clients did. This is their projected total cost per acre. The star in the center there is the average of that data set. To read that, you go up and over, basically. So you look at the data points, there's some outliers that are kind of pretty funky, but a lot of them are in there. But what does that tell us? So again, I'm welcoming feedback on this. So I said, well, let's start, and this is why we have broken those KPIs, one KPI. And some people say, I know my cost per bushel. Do you know it by manageable units? Do you know it by input? Do you know it by operation? Do you know it by land? No, I just know the net. How do you manage the net? You and I were talking about that. How do you manage just an average? You just can't manage it. It's just a number. So you got to figure out how to break it into pieces. So here we put input. Now here it's the same side on the left, it's the gross dollars per acre projected, and now it's the input cost per acre. 400 on this line, 150 in this line. Well, that data is doing some interesting things there, starting to break out. Okay, you can see these. Then I put these boxes in, which are just $100, $100 move, $100 move up, $100 move over, and just kind of stack them on what looked like the regression line, and started to look. And I said, okay, where do you want to be? Where do you want? If you were one of these dots, where do you want to be? Well, over here, these dots are reaching more dollars for less dollars than other dots. So I'm kind of thinking, and see if everybody disagrees with me, that you kind of want to know what these guys are doing. They're getting more, they're projecting that they're going to have more gross. It's the same price. They're not projecting a higher price. They're projecting yield, so my assumption is if they're projecting 220 bushel yields, they'll fertilize it for 220. Hopefully they're not dreaming. Now there's some outliers, which I don't know, but so I'm saying, what is this the benchmark in a sense? Starting to identify where you're at. Now these guys, they have less expectation, but they're still spending a lot. So I would say I don't know, but I do know a couple of them are outliers. That mean they're in southern Missouri. There's someplace where land is not as good. They got to put more input cost in to get a lower yield. You got to and you're going into the kind of structure you're really going into the next 2, 3, 4 years. Moe, frankly, is the most positive news I've heard for a long time about where things are going. But you got to say is, okay, do they have to look at that model? Do they have to look at their production model? Like I had to look at when I had a 300 sow farm, and I knew I couldn't compete anymore. And what was I going to do? Probably should have raised pigs with somebody else. But I got out of the pig business. But, retrospectively, that was a bad decision. But anyway, you got to start asking yourself questions about what you should be doing.
So if I understand that, I think what you're saying is that there's more variation for the non-input costs than there are for the input costs across the farms, and you're standardizing this against the input costs and seeing what else is affecting the gross revenue.
Right. Well, Moe, I take a little exception to your see, I went into this with your knowledge saying, well, the input costs are the same for everybody. They're not.
No.
Some people are getting more out of what they're putting on than others.
On a relative basis, there's less variation in input costs than there are machinery.
Okay, and I'm seeing variation here. Now, that leads me to the next one, thank you, which is now it's gross dollars per acre, operating cost per acre. So this is the variation, and you're right, you're exactly right. More variation. Where is it telling you, again, should you be coming in here? Okay. These guys are maybe, okay, we're going to get a little more, but look how much more I can spend to get it. And the problem with this data is I'm sure there's some outliers, just inconsistent ways of getting this tracked, something unusual going on, but I'm seeing the same kind of things. And I don't know if the box is meaningful or not, this is my observation. But I think I'd rather be here than here. I'd rather go for $700 of income at $130 an acre instead of spending $250 for $715. So if this is my data and I looked at this, I would say, what are we doing? And back, this is the tie back to this one, is waste. And I've seen this in the hog industry. Initially in feed. I think it's going on with that too, in feed. Where people, it's not the feed companies that you've had your long-term relationship were screwing you by selling you crap. They were selling you way more than you actually needed. And you were overfeeding the pigs when the price went up. Maybe it was fine when pigs were worth $80. But when they're at $50 or $45, you're feeding way too much nutrition for what you're getting. So, and that translates into waste. And I think what's happening, too much equipment, because you've been sold on an idea of having nice equipment, or I get my crop planted in 6 days instead of 10 days. Is that worth it? I think the waste is showing up when you start seeing those outliers. And in the input costs, I suspect, and I don't have any confirmation of this other than looking at a lot of data, is that the same kind of waste that happened in livestock production with feed costs that were excessive, there are inputs that are excessive on crop side. You're planting a corn that can raise 320 bushels, oh my God, or whatever. But you can only raise 220, so why are you paying for something you can't possibly harvest? And there seems to be a big belief driving, and this is the other side of the coin. The divisor is really important. Bushels per acre, pounds of pigs meat per litter, those are huge, important numbers. But sometimes the chasing the really big numbers I think drives us into making decisions that make waste in our operation.
So in conclusion, where you want to be is on the top of that red diagonal line. And Norm, I'm really impressed with the panelists and the presenters you got coming on, because this whole area, production agriculture and precision ag and data management, is going to cause increased variation. And as I've said before, that you don't have to use any of that technology. You just have to compete with those that do. And thank you for being here. It's a pleasure being here every year, Norm. I'm going to be with the group again tonight, and would be glad to answer any individual questions. So please sign up for our free market update, and Brian will follow up with you on that.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you. There's a lot of work goes into those numbers, and just